In this episode, we talk with Leif Egelthun, CEO of Retrolux. We talk about transitioning from early adopters and going upstream to larger clients, the importance of knowing your customers and their needs, and the value needed to eventually be acquired. I'm Ryan Vasso with the Venture College, a program in the College of Innovation and Design at Boise State University. The Venture College helps students and community members launch their ideas beyond the classroom and turn those ideas into startups, lifestyle businesses, side hustles, and other ventures. Almost every startup initially struggles to find product market fit, where their service or product matches exactly what customers want and need. That's why we've started the Value Prop series. We will be talking to successful entrepreneurs who will explain what their product or service does, which customer segments really need their product, and why they are a better fit than the existing competition. In seeing other companies explain their value proposition, we hope to help you find and build your own value proposition. If you are interested in learning more or need some help, contact us at venturecollege@boisestate.edu or go to our website to learn more. Also, watch out for our social media accounts for the next installments of the Value Prop series. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Leif Egelthun, CEO and founder of Retrolux. Leif, tell us, what is Retrolux? What do you do?
So Retrolux is a sales platform for lighting contractors that replace old, energy inefficient lighting in commercial and industrial buildings with new technologies like LEDs, advanced controls, and other energy efficient and higher end lighting systems.
Okay, so let's even stop there. So you're not selling directly to, like, let's call it Boise State. You're going to sell to the person who sells light bulbs to Boise State. Is that correct?
Exactly. So our primary customers are lighting contractors and a type of company called an energy service company that works with companies and organizations like Boise State to help them reduce their energy consumption by putting in better lighting systems.
Got it. So walk me through, like, what does your product do that, like, truly stands out versus like what they were doing before your product exists?
Yep. So our industry, like much of the construction industry, has been pretty slow to adopt technology. And so our customers before using Retrolux typically would use pencil and paper in the field to take notes. They would go back to their office and use Excel spreadsheets and maybe Word or PowerPoint to try to put together a proposal that they could show their customer what the project would look like. So they're doing design, they're doing estimating, and they're doing that all fairly manually.
So I forget the source, but there's a rule of thumb that says if you're looking for a new startup idea, start by looking at industries that are still using things like spreadsheets, because it's a really manual process and a process that you can automate, which in the long run would help companies save money, but also reduce some of the mistakes they make when they're doing manual inputs. Got it. And is there any type of, like, okay, so I get you sell to, let's just use the Boise State example. You sell to your sales rep is going to use your software to kind of do that initial proposal. Mm-hmm. Post proposal, is there anything your software does to kind of maintain that relationship or give updates, or what happens after that initial sale?
Yep. So once a project is sold, the next step is they got to go and get it installed. Okay. And so we have built out technology that allows them to automatically process orders with their vendors. And now it's funny you bring that up, like we're literally starting development this week on what we call project management. And so project management will be tools to help them manage the installation of that equipment into the facility. Post-installation, there's one more part of the industry that we're going to focus on, which is what we call operations. Yep. And so once that light bulb is installed, until it needs to be replaced because it burns out, maybe you get a failure early and you need to process a warranty, or there's just a better lighting system that you can install before that burns out. We're going to be building in tools to help our customers basically be a resource for Boise State through the lifetime of that lighting system.
So what Leif is describing is actually very common among startups. He's tackling an entire process of installing light bulbs in a commercial industry. But his startup initially just probably started with the quoting process and then maybe the install process. So this is what he has today. This is what's functioning. And so remember, these guys were using spreadsheets before. He makes this much more efficient. But then he's actually got the project management side, so making sure like the install actually goes through properly. And then the operations side, which says, well, once the light bulbs are in, is there any software to help me like maintain good lighting and make sure things run smoothly? And so he's building this out just because it follows the natural life cycle of the entire light bulb. Two things will happen when he finishes this piece out. One, he has the opportunity for expansion revenue. So expansion revenue means that he has a customer that's already paying him for 1 and 2, and now when 3 and 4 are ready, he can go back to those same customers and say, hey, if you pay a little bit extra, now there's these additional services. Also, when he lands 3 and 4 and he has this full lifetime cycle for light bulbs, he'll be able to sell more and ideally close more because his value proposition is even stronger. Now it's not just I help you quote and install light bulbs efficiently. Now it's I maintain the entire relationship for light bulbs and really automate that process for you. And so in theory, he should be able to sell for more money and at a faster rate.
Lighting system. And
Yeah.
most importantly, at the end of that lighting system, when they need to put something new in, and in 5 to 10 years when the lighting system needs to be replaced, I can almost guarantee that they will be replaced with an advanced control system that could do things like contact tracing. So literally the lighting system, and these systems are installed today and are getting used for contact tracing, can track every single person in a facility and notify somebody if they've been within 6 feet of somebody else. They can notify somebody if they have too many people in a space based on the capacity. They can track grandma when she leaves her hospital room and let somebody know they need to let her get back to where she needs to be. So lighting systems will become the backbone of a lot of the IoT infrastructure that is going to really digitize our buildings. And the reason for that is it has power. It's up in the ceiling, so it has eyes, it can see. And so it's got a natural fit for deploying sensors and cameras and speakers and all the other things that we're going to be looking to enhance our buildings.
This point of the interview, we determined that Leif is actually part of the deep state. All joking aside, what he's talking about is really nice to have in startups, which is industry expertise. And so not only does he have a product, but he's staying on top of all the trends so that his partners, remember his main customer is vendors who sell light bulbs. And so if he can do all the legwork of doing the research and staying on top of them, then it's just his goal to educate the customers. And that happens a lot faster than if the customers were to try to be industry experts in and of themselves. So knowing that that's the technology of the future, like that's lighting in and of itself, which you're not necessarily touching. I assume you're just going to stay on top of it to be like industry experts and help your sales folks kind of know the trends. Where do you as technology advances, though, like where do you see your company? Is it like, are you positioning yourself as just like an industry expert, or like where's the connection between advancement of technology and your company?
Yep. So as the technology becomes more advanced, as it's more connected, as it's more digital, as there's more bells and whistles that are attached to it, it's going to be more complicated to design. It's going to be more complicated to sell. It's going to be more complicated to maintain and operate. And so the need to have a central hub for the industry practitioners to work off of and to execute all of those steps will become, we think, even more important. And so the software piece of what we're doing ultimately allows what is a very linear process for installing lighting. I mean, the jokes are literally millennia old on how many people it takes to change a light bulb, right?
Sure.
And we're going to change that by making it a circular process, a self-aware process that essentially is always managing that lighting system through the life of the building versus through the life of the light bulb.
So from what I'm hearing is maybe like initially when you started your company, made it easier to sell light bulbs, but are seeing an opportunity to continue and almost essentially have like ownership in that building, that you're like that constant overwatching client to make recommendations of changes or make sure the install gets correct. It goes beyond just that initial point of sale.
Yeah, we call it, life cycle management. And so the entire system life cycle management will be what our software does. And the initial customers we have that are out there selling the systems will continue to want to use the system because it becomes the, secret sauce to help them resell that customer and support the customer in a more, I think, professional way. But bringing in the vendors that want to sell product, bringing in Boise State, for instance, as a node in that network, so they can be aware of what their system is doing and when they need to budget to replace it, and why they might want to put something in that's a little bit better than standard, the cheapest system. All of those things software can do automatically.
Yeah.
and gives us a lot of opportunity to really become a important piece of the life cycle management of that particular location.
So we already talked about why Leif wants to move into the life cycle management. It's going to help him upsell and get that expansion revenue. It's also going to allow him to sell more at a higher price because it's a fuller system. But here he's also talking about something interesting. So right now, initially his software is really built for light bulb salespeople. And with the life cycle management, he thinks his tool can expand to more people. So, for example, it could be the light bulb vendors or manufacturers. And then also, his software could be used for the end clients, meaning like the Boise States of the world would actually be using his software as well. They wouldn't necessarily pay for it, but they could benefit for it. The reason why this is so important is it's going to reduce churn. So this is huge in software. Churn is essentially when people cancel. So the more people that are involved in your software, and the more nodes, as he calls it, are interacting with your software, the harder it is for people to cancel. Because if Boise State loves his product and loves his software, even if his light bulb salespeople want to move off of it, they can't, because the end client is used to it and they love it and they're not going to move off of it. So it's a very good strategy for software. Makes sense. Once that piece is in place, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but like, can you cut out the salesperson? Like, it just seems like at that point, if you can, get an assessment and do the order and check the install, why wouldn't Boise State just want to use your software directly instead of having to use the sales guy?
Yeah, we've done a lot of thinking on that, and I believe that at some level we will reduce the amount of need for salespeople to be involved. But the reality is, lighting systems, while they seem pretty basic, have a lot of nuance to them. And so having an expert that can walk through the different options with a customer and why they may or may not want to do things will still need to be there. And quite frankly, there's also a saying in not just our industry, but a lot of industries where people, especially in B2B, and we focus on commercial and industrial, not residential. And in B2B, if you're the facility manager at BSU, the facility engineer, the architect, the folks there that are responsible for ensuring that the lights come on for the students, they want somebody that they can lean on to get things done. And they want to be able to call somebody when something goes wrong. And I hate to use the term, but they want, one neck to choke when things go wrong. They like having that personal touch. And I don't necessarily think in B2B you're ever going to get rid of that. So our tools really just supercharge the system. Maybe it allows the company that employs that salesperson to do twice as much business with the same sales team so they can lower their pricing. But if you're a major organization like Boise State, you do want somebody on the other end of a phone that you can call and yell at or get something done immediately, because that's just a requirement of that type of customer. So we don't see them ever going all the way away.
So this is a great example of knowing who your customers are. So Leif knows that a client like BSU ultimately wants to be able to pick up the phone or talk to someone face to face to answer questions or do consulting, etc. And he knows that he's a software company and he does not want to go in that space. Now, maybe one day, eventually, if he becomes really big, we've seen software companies actually expand into the service role. But for right now, Leif is set on being a software company. And so in that case, that's where he can rely on his vendors. If he provides his vendors with efficient software and then that knowledge base of new products, he arms them so that they become more efficient and potentially saves them time, or at least just makes them more valuable to Boise State. But he knows he just doesn't want to ever get in this game of the consulting and someone picking up the phone and calling him every time. And that's good. It's good to know what value you want to give to your customers and what value you want to hand off to other people. And in this case, he's handing that off to the vendors. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then you mentioned a few customer segments, whether it's like small businesses or the large ones like at Boise State. Who I know you're selling directly to light bulb sales teams right now. Like what's the best demographic for that? Like is it are you looking for people that have like X number of clients, or they service X number of light bulbs? Like kind of like what's your sweet spot?
Yeah, so we as we started the company, I think this is pretty, it's not maybe totally common, but fairly common with companies, is you got to focus on companies that are willing to buy your product and use your
Yeah.
product. And those early adopters, at least in a more sophisticated, complicated industry like ours, are typically going to be the smaller, more nimble, companies. And so early on, we've definitely focused on and have been really excited to have what I would consider to be the small and medium businesses in our industry that are out there servicing commercial buildings, retail buildings, single locations, so smaller and or by location count or just smaller by overall size. In the last year, though, we've advanced the technology to support companies that are going after large institutional clients, large Fortune 100 customers as well. And so, as we've advanced the technology, we've been moving upstream.
Leif is describing happens to almost all startups. And that when you launch a new startup, you're looking for these what's called early adopters. And they tend to be very small. So it's like small to medium-sized businesses. And a lot of times, these small to medium-sized businesses will take a risk. And it is a risk, right? You're a brand new company, so they're kind of putting faith in you. They'll take a risk on you because they want a competitive advantage. Because these small players are competing against other small players. And so any competitive advantage can really give them an angle. But eventually, you want to move to larger clients. And that's what Leif is trying to do. He's moving what he called upstream to more of the general, broader, larger clients. And to do that, first off, these clients, these type, are way more needy. They have a lot more feature sets that they need. To Leif's point, he's building out the whole lifetime cycle of light bulbs to meet this type of client because that's what they need. Usually the larger clients are not looking for niche features. They're not looking for just a tool to help with quoting. They're looking for a tool that would help from quoting all the way to project management and operations at the end. And then also a lot of times these clients need you to prove out that you can scale so that your technology can scale out easy. So while the dream is to always get to these larger clients, it is a process. You have to ace it with the early adopters first to see if you have initial value, and then start pivoting your product to some of these features that are absolute needs for larger clients, whereas those same features might be nice to have or even irrelevant for these early adopters. So there's definitely a balance to be had.
And so the value prop changes as you change your customer base, and you have to know what what those changes are so that you speak to them in a language that is going to resonate. And I think you got to take a little bit of humble pie, and be willing to listen to them telling you that your product sucks and why it's. And so, telling you that your baby sucks is something you get very used to as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is say why. Like, what is it missing? Why does it suck? Like, what is wrong? And we do that, I think, very well. And that's been super critical for us to develop our product roadmap so that we can know that we're building the right things that will unlock those larger customers that ultimately are, a better fit for where we want to be.
So Leif really nails what's really hard about entrepreneurship, in that you've built a product or a service that you as the founder really love and you're excited about. And then you put it out to the world and the world tells you it's not good enough, or it's not even close, or it's super ugly or not functional. And that's really hurtful at times, especially if you have a lot of emotions tied to it. But what's key to note here is that process is a little bit different depending on if you're going for early adopters versus larger clients. So when you put a product out at the beginning to early adopters, a lot of times you're trying to figure out, are you my customer segment? Right? Like, are you the right person to use my tool? And so you're more on the hunt of like, is this even useful for your type of industry? Is this even useful for your type of business? And so you get a lot of rejection just because you haven't met the customer segment side. And that's fine. And that's pretty natural because you're like, oh, never mind. You don't have this need or you don't have this pain. But once you find early adopters and you're moving upstream, then you start talking to larger clients. You're in the ballpark, because they already have kind of processes that are going to be similar to early adopters. They're in the same industry. But to Leif's point, they can still call your product really ugly, mainly because it lacks a lot of features. And it's missing certain things that they absolutely need to have. And so it moves more from a discussion of, are you my right customer, to, hey, do we have the right features? And to Leif's point, if you listen and they will tell you like no, but if you can follow up with a why, like what am I missing, you can start to build those feature sets out, so the next demo you give, you can come back and you're more prepared because you know this is what the larger clients are going to want.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap up kind of almost in a different direction. You've correct me if I'm wrong, that you've taken some investment, you're investor backed. Usually people I talk to that have investments, at least in the back of your head, you're always thinking, acquisition at some point. Talk to me, like if you were to predict who acquires you and what's the value that you'd bring, where they would pull the trigger and do an acquisition.
Yep. So the type of companies that would acquire us largely fit into what I would call probably 2 or 3 different types of buckets. So the first bucket that we think is the most attractive for us and our investors, as well as our customers. And I think about our customers a lot when I think about acquisition, not just our investors and our team, would be what I would largely lump into workflow productivity software.
Okay.
And so that could include companies like Salesforce, which everybody's familiar with for the most part. There's another company in our industry called Trimble. Trimble is very big in the electrical estimating industry.
Got it.
And so we could be a piece of their puzzle for how you estimate lighting retrofits and other energy efficient retrofits. So that's one bucket.
Yep.
Second bucket would be what I would call marketplaces. As we add in tools to monetize the vendor transactions on the platform, we start to look like a very nice B2B marketplace. And in that case, you're going to, start to target acquisition from companies like Amazon. And there's other ones like them in our industry that would probably be more appropriate, but you could think of that particular exit. And then the third one would be an exit to a strategic in our industry. And so there are rather large companies like Siemens, Honeywell, Johnson Controls, these types of companies that are looking for ways to advance getting their technologies out into the marketplace. And that's the least attractive because they're competitive with our customers to some degree. And so, there may not be as much of an alignment with our customer base and that acquisition partner. So one of our competitors, for instance, just recently sold to one of the top 5 distributors in our industry. And that's great, but we have distributors as customers. And so they don't want to be on a platform that has that conflict. So that's the least attractive to us because we like to support our customers, but it's an obvious potential acquisition path.
Sure. So the theme of value proposition and acquisitions isn't talked about a lot, but the principles stay true, meaning that if a company is going to acquire your company, there still has to be some underlying value of why they're even doing that offer. And a lot of times that could be market share. So you've built your business, you have a good book of business, and they just want to, instead of manually doing the marketing work to try to steal that market share, they can just buy it. And your value is all of your customers behind you. Sometimes we see startups that don't have any type of market share or very little, but they have amazing technology. So you see it a lot with like Amazon or Google or some of these bigger companies. They will pick up startups not because they're already giants, but because they have a certain piece of technology that they want to plug into their infrastructure. Another acquisition we've seen is Acquihire, which is essentially they're acquiring your company mainly for the team. They don't maybe even necessarily need the technology or the market share, but they want you for the team. And then others we've seen with Synergy, just they think that if your service combined with their service or their product will have a tenfold effect than selling it by themselves. And so whatever this might be, and there are more reasons, even Leif, brought out examples of marketplaces, et cetera. But just keep in mind, if you ever are shooting for an acquisition, you have to provide a value proposition to the company that's acquiring you as well, not just to end clients.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, Leif, thank you so much for explaining your value proposition, like very clear. And I think even more importantly, like the roadmap of your future makes just a lot of sense because I can kind of definitely understand why you're trying to understand capture the whole life cycle versus just that point of sale. So thank you so much for your time and good luck with your company.
No problem. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, so as we always do, let's wrap up by reviewing the value proposition canvas, starting with the customer side. So Leif, and on this one, we'll highlight, the SMB early adopters you talked about, the light managers. Right now, they're doing manual quotes. So they'll go to the physical facility, They'll use their spreadsheets and take notes to do manual quotes. And then over the lifetime, they'll do manual tracking and manual monitoring to make sure, the light bulbs are working well and everything's going well. The biggest pain of this is just it's expensive, right? So you're paying a salesperson to go out and to develop these manual quotes and plug in spreadsheets, and it just takes time. And then it's also prone to errors, and those errors could be you undersold, and you could have sold more, or you just bought the wrong product. Just anything manual is always prone to errors. And then nice to have that these guys are always looking for is just they're always on the hunt for competitive advantages, so that they ultimately can sell more, right? So not only is it a cost savings down here, but they're looking to increase sales over time. So Leif's process, he's started out with essentially 2 core products, which is he's really automated the quote process and made it a whole lot easier, reduces spreadsheets, and just has more of a professional feel. So he helps out with the quote, and he also helps out with the install to make sure that the right pieces are ordered. And then coming soon, like he talked about, the project management and the operations side, meaning that he actually helps the install process. And then once the install process is in place, he'll help monitor operations throughout to make sure that everything's running smoothly. So as far as like matching the pains, so we said it's expensive, right? This sales process is really expensive. Well, his software reduces those costs and reduces the time it requires, and then also reduces the mistakes. And then on the competitive advantage side, at least for these SMBs, ideally they're closing more sales because he's providing them with more professional quotes, providing him with the professional knowledge base. Remember, Leif is on top of all the new trends, and so he passes that information along to the SMBs. So ultimately, they're saving money, but it'd be interesting. I never asked him this. It'd be interesting to say, ask Leif, is the value more the savings of the costs, or is at the end of the day, they're closing more sales because of the software? So if I re-interviewed him, I would ask him that question. But either way, it's a strong value proposition. It was a pleasure talking with Leif. Thanks for listening. While you're waiting for the next episode, feel free to contact us or follow us on social media.